So good morning to all. So recently we have just done the one procedure which is not entirely cardiac, but the patient was really needed that procedure. So we have addressed the carotid artery stenosis by percutaneous intervention. And so here is the brief review about what literature say, what are the symptomatology, when to do the stenting or when not to touch any carotid artery stenosis. So the carotid artery disease, by definition, if the stenosis is more than 50% of the any extracranial internal carotid artery. Here all we are discussing is purely the extracranial part of the internal carotid artery, not any of the intracranial artery. If there is a symptomatic, for symptomatic, if the patient had any symptoms, then symptoms includes TIA, transient ischemic attack, or any occurred cerebrovascular stroke. If it is less than in last 6 months, then that patient is called the symptomatic. And the asymptomatic is there is no prior symptoms or patient had a severe stroke before 6 months. So if the patient had a severe stroke before 1 year of the presentation, then the patient will be called the asymptomatic category. This symptomatic and asymptomatic category are defined by the guidelines, and there is very significant difference in the management of these patients. The risk of the stroke, the carotid bifurcation is predilection for development of the atherosclerosis. We had in the cardiovascular event, means cardiovascular disease also. If there is a bifurcation, there are high chances of developing any atherosclerotic plaque. The plaque disease, carotid artery disease, is primary depending on the amount of the plaque or the bulkier the plaque. If the dense cap of the plaque on CT, MRI, the core of the lipid and the necrotic debris, this is the primary depending. If the plaque contains more lipid, then it can be classified as a vulnerable plaque. And sir, carotid, CT scan, SNCs, MRI, smooth muscle cell, dense cap of the collagen tissue, smooth muscle cell. On MRI, we can definite that, means if there is a collagen is small or smooth muscle cell is small. The vulnerable plaque has reduced amount of collagen and increased inflammation. The thinning of the fibrous cap and increased cholesterol in the necrotic core. The plaque fissuring or the rupture, here also the plaque fissuring or rupture is the primary event which leads to the embolization of the atherosclerotic material or the necrotic debris that lead to the TIA or the severe stroke. The natural history of the carotid artery bifurcation diseases, there are two dominant factors which determine the risk of any ischemic symptom, ischemic complication. First, the symptomatic status of the lesion. If the patient has recent symptoms, means less than 6 months, there are higher chances of the redeveloping that symptoms. And the severity of the stenosis. If patient has a stenosis more than 70%, there are higher chances of the redeveloping symptoms or developing the severe stroke or the TIA. That was my trial.
The vulnerable plaque that you can identify on MRI.
MRI, yes.
CT money.
CT money. Sir, if there is a calcium, we can identify calcium, but the plaque morphology specifically is not identified on the CT. It can be identified on the Doppler also. Carotid Doppler means carotid sonography. We can identify if there is a more necrotic material or more. It is inferior than MRI, but we can get some idea. The NASCAD trial, risk of the ipsilateral stroke at 2 years, followed by medically treated patient in symptomatic stenosis of 70-99% was 26%. So 1 in 4 patient, if they managed medically, following TIA or severe cardiac stroke, this can develop repeat stroke. Among the patient with symptomatic stenosis, 50 to 69%, the 5-year risk of ipsilateral stroke was 22%. Here the hazard ratio. Here we can see for the more than 80 or around 90% stenosis, the hazard ratio. So patient has 10 times more risk, head group has 10 times more risk than the normal population or the patient with the less than 50% stenosis. In the 3 years of video. how to identify for the what is the investigation. The first line investigation is the Doppler ultrasound. In Doppler ultrasound, we can see the lumen echolucency, intraplaque hemorrhage, or any surface irregularity. This intraplaque hemorrhage and surface irregularity tends to show us it is a vulnerable plaque and there is a high risk of the developing stroke or the embolization. The Doppler velocity, the peak systolic velocity and end diastolic velocity, this measurement, comparison or the ratio of the internal carotid by common carotid peak systolic velocity for the accurate estimation of the stenosis severity. SID consists there is a radiological criteria which is formed to identify the perfect stenosis or not. The sonographic Nasket index, this is also trial based index which includes the diameter of the artery. Now, MRI tends to show the plaque morphology or the status of the vulnerable plaque. CT angiography, severe calcification may overestimate the stenosis. MR angiography does not visualize the vascular calcification and it is kind of less level than the brain MRI. It can give only the lumen but it doesn't give you plaque characteristic if MR angiography. Then transcranial Doppler. Transcranial Doppler is useful for detection of the if there is embolization and it is more importantly useful for the cerebrovascular reserve. If there is a cerebrovascular reserve is impaired, means rise in the PCO2 with the dilatation of the peak systolic velocity, then it is tend to more significant stenosis at the carotid.
So severe calcification has any other prognostic value?
Yes, sir. Severe calcification is also important in the determining the mode of the intervention.
Or intervention is important.
The more calcified, less success with the stent.
So there must be any scoring system of that in which you should go for step.
Actually, there is a scoring system also, and there is a actually they primarily depending on the patient is symptomatic or asymptomatic. If the symptomatic with vulnerable plaque, surgery is more important or surgery is more beneficial than the intervention because there does tend to the distal embolization during the intervention also. We are coming to this. Now, there are two main trials, which is the landmark trial in case of the carotid stenosis management. These trials were included in the ESC guideline 2017 and also that include recent guideline 2023 European Vascular Surgery Guidelines. So both trials has taken different measurement to calculate the percentage of the stenosis. Here we can see the Nasket trial, which is the North American intervention trial, endarterectomy trial. The both trials are surgical trial. They are comparing endarterectomy with the medical management. The Nasket trial is done by North American Society. Then the ESCT is European Society trial. The Nasket trial, in that we can see the measurement here. They have taken A minus B. So they have taken the intraluminal diameter, the narrowing of the intraluminal diameter for this Nasket trial. ESCT, they have taken the propensity or the estimated extraluminal. Means if the lumen were normal, what could be the diameter? They have taken that.
CT/MR, you have Doppler.
Both CT/MR, not Doppler. Now the treatment part, there are mainly three modalities of the treatment. First one is the medical therapy. We don't do any intervention or any surgery. The second one is the endovascular therapy, carotid artery stenting. The third one is the open surgery or carotid endarterectomy. This one is the 2017 guideline. The same is for the 2023 most recent guideline. The recent less than 6 months symptoms of the stroke. So, if there is imaging, means we can divide the patient into symptomatic and asymptomatic. So, if there is a less than 6 months symptoms of the stroke, patient has symptom that divides to symptomatic patient. The imaging of the carotid artery should be done and the stenosis should be acquired. The amount of the stenosis should be identified. The second one is the imaging of the artery and amount of stenosis should be identified, both cases. Now, for the symptomatic patient, here, if it is less than 50% based medical treatment or the optimal medical management is required, or occlusion or the near occlusion. So here the guidelines is if artery is already occluded, don't do anything, keep on medical management.
That is in symptomatic or asymptomatic?
Both.
Both.
Both. If artery is occluded, don't do anything. Here also, occlusion or near occlusion, symptomatic, asymptomatic. In both cases, if artery is occluded, don't do anything.
So here we are not including this acute stroke patients, right?
No.
This is for chronic carotid stenosis.
And this is for the extracranial carotid artery, not intracranial angle. If the carotid stenosis is less than 50%, then also optical medical management. And if carotid stenosis in asymptomatic patient, if stenosis less than 60, then also optical medical management. For the patient having symptomatic stenosis 50 to 70%, in that patient, the class 2A indication is endarterectomy plus medical. Class 2B indication is carotid artery stenting plus medical. If the symptomatic stenosis having 70 to 100%, here class 1 indication is surgical endarterectomy and the class 2A indication is stenting. Here also the factor that could be help in the deciding whether the surgery or stenting is the anatomy of the artery, high risk of the patient or the surgical risk of the patient, life expectancy. These are the factors that could be considering deciding whether the surgery or the stenting.
So how will you decide 99% stenosis and near occlusion? What's the difference on imaging?
So distal flow is different.
In 99% and near occlusion.
Yes. If there is a some amount of the distal flow, then it is kind of we can say it is not occluded. Means if there is a no distal flow, for here they have decided that occlusion or the near occlusion, it means there is no distal flow through the artery.
Even in near occlusion there is no distal flow.
Almost TB1 flow means there is no there is just a penetration, no perfusion.
And what about in 99%?
There is a perfusion also. Actually, sir, they are considering the cerebral vasoregulation in this. So, if the vasoregulator means if the artery is already occluded and the brain is perfusion well.
That is that I agree.
Exactly.
As a layman I was asking what's the difference in near occlusion and 99%. These two are different treatment. That is that.
Exactly. But in the guideline they have said if artery only penetration is there but there is no perfusion, means we are not getting any flow from through the artery, or means that artery is not perfusing the brain, then it is completely occluded or the near occlusion.
Okay.
Actually, they have on CT they have criteria, means frame price criteria. So first, second frame, third frame, means when you are getting the flow through that frame, then they
If
have
at all something is getting penetrated, the time will be important. Which frame they are coming up to with it. Something like that.
the management of the antithrombotic treatment for the asymptomatic patient, single antiplatelet aspirin or clopidogrel is indicated for 1 month and started immediately up to long term. Ideal is 1 year, but it is lifelong therapy is indicated. And if we have done stenting, so dual antiplatelet for 1 month, then lifelong single antiplatelet. If we have done the surgery, then the single antiplatelet lifelong. But here the dose of the clopidogrel is different. They have advised clopidogrel 75 milligram per day only. It is half the cardiac dose. Now coming to the case, we have recently encountered the 47-year-old female presented with the left-sided weakness before 15 days. They gradually improved with medication over 1 week. And there is a history of the ISD single vessel disease, PTCA validity done on 2011. History of the diabetes, hypertension for last 12 years. The vitals was stable. Only thing was the patient was significantly hypertensive. At present, when the patient presented to us, she had mild facial paresis and a decreased left hand grip only. There is no other water deficit. The MRI which was done outside at the time of the stroke, that was suggestive of the left internal carotid and left posterior cerebral artery stenosis. It wasn't a completely occluded. Here is our invasive angiography. So here we can see there is a significant stenosis in the internal carotid artery, which is amount to by machine means quantification. It was come to around 87%.
This was extracranial part.
Yes, extracranial. So, as per guideline, the first class 1 indication was surgery, but patient was very less surgical risk. Means patient was not that much surgical risk also, and as per we know, patient was not waiting for surgery at that time. So we have given option because he has average surgical risk and there is almost less risk with the stroke. The plaque was not that kind of the vulnerable plaque, means there was no fatty or liquid core in this plaque. So we have given option for the stenting also. The procedure, this is the basic outline of the procedure. First we cross the wire, then we put the distal protection device. The second one we pre-dilate with the balloon, then we put the stent, and the last one is the post-dilatation of the stent and removal of the distal protection device. Here is the same step. There is an artery, we cross by wire, put distal protection device, put the stent, and removal of all the hardware.
When you give anticoagulation, during this or after this?
Separate, primary, it's the same as the loading. Means in the myocardium before the procedure.
Suppose this patient would have been thrombolized 15 days back, then is there any difference in the management?
Sir, if patient is thrombolized, means with RTP, if there is a serious complete occlusion of the artery, no.
So this we are doing for secondary prevention.
Yes, we are doing this for secondary prevention. If the patient was thrombolized, but if the patient was thrombolized for intracranial artery,
Why intracranial? Suppose this is the same thing.
internal carotid means 100% occluded internal carotid.
Yes.
And thrombolized.
સેમ પેશન્ટ 15 દિવસ પહેલા તારી પાસે આવ્યું હતું પણ 2 જ કલાકમાં આવી જતો ગોલ્ડન ફેઝ હતો તમે થ્રોમ્બોલાઇઝ કરી નાખ્યું પછી 15 દિવસ પછી તમે આ જોયું અને આ સ્ટેનોસિસ આવ્યું.
So same method. That comes in the symptomatic category, symptomatic severe stenosis, and we need to do same with carotid stent. The only thing which change the your diagnosis or to change the management is patient was symptomatic or not symptomatic, and the stenosis, area of the stenosis, and the choice of the surgery is depending on the plaque, means the vulnerability of the plaque.
So what is being done during acute attack, that is not important.
That is not important.
Yes.
But here in the MRI, if we are seeing that there is a vulnerable plaque, if in MRI we are seeing the lipid rich necrotic core plaque, then the stenting is not advisable, because that increase the risk of the embolization and increase the risk of the stroke. Now the important aspect of the procedure is distal protection device. There are the 3 type of the distal protection device: the distal occluder, then the umbrella device or the filtration device, then the proximal occluder device. So this distal occluder prevent the distal flow of the blood, and there is some risk of the stroke or embolization with the distal occluder. Umbrella device is the safest and it is the latest device which is used maximally. In this there is a seal or the filtration occurs of the blood in this part. This does not prevent the flow of the blood. This just filters the blood. And proximal occluder prevent the proximal flow of the blood, but this this doesn't help while if you are taking the any shot, means if you are want to give contrast and if you want to visualize the vessel, that is not possible with the proximal occluder device. Most recently they have developed the filter type device and they have replaced the digital occlusion device in FDC. But the proximal occlusion device, little bit they are kind of little bit harmful also because they are occluding blood and lead to the symptoms of the ischemia also. This is the different filtration device. This one is Accurate, is the BioPort. Spider, we are using commonly Spider EV3 device here. Then Neo 6 BioPort. Both embolic filter is there. AngioGuard, FiberNet, and the filter wire is there. These devices are useful also in the peripheral intervention also, and if there is a severe high thrombotic load in the myocardial intervention also. Now, how they work? So here, this is the video of the Spider FX device. Before onset, before starting the procedure, we deploy the device distal to the lesion, and the device deployment is a simple, means we just pull down the catheter or push the device through the catheter. It takes the it is the elastic device, takes the shape of the artery, and now if any debris or which is that prevent distal embolization by relieving any debris. This is a self-expanding stent. We are doing post-dilatation. Debris are primarily released during the stent implantation or the post-dilatation.
સ્ટેન્ટ એકચ્યુઅલી આવી રીતે રખાય કે બીજી આર્ટરીના એન્ટ્રન્સ પર શું ભાઈ એ ફેલાતો હોય તો એ થોડું પાછળ પર વિડીયો this much long stent you need to put.
Yes sir, actually we need to cover the bifurcation.
We need to cover the bifurcation
Because otherwise that will increase the chance of the restenosis.
stent thrombosis.
Stent thrombosis also, restenosis also sir. Should I play again sir?
ઠીક છે ચાલો.
Now the advantages and the disadvantages of the distal protection devices. Now the proximal occlusion and the distal filter. Advantage is easy to use with the experience. Distal filter device means we need to approximate the lumen of the vessel with distal filter device. If there is any gap between the filter device and the lumen, that won't be helpful. Now the some loss of visualization, which is the major point for the proximal occlusion device, and they require larger device to introduce larger sheath or the larger catheter to introduce that device. Then the distal filter is little bit helpful. It is very easy to use, but it is little bit inferior than the proximal occlusion device. Stent selection. The stent we are using during this coronary intervention are the flexible self-expanding stent. It is mainly made of the nitinol nickel titanium alloy, and it is the most unique material. But here, what is the main difference between the carotid and the coronary stent? Here we tend to use more elastic stent. So this metal are little bit flexible. The making of the stent is more flexible. This one is the major difference between the stent making. This one is the closed cell design of the stent, and this one is the open cell design of the stent. Here we can say the cell of the open cells are the almost open. The use or the benefit of this open cell is this stent to more flexible. Means if that can negotiate with the curve of the vessel and fit very much, means there is a less chances of the stent thrombosis also and stent restenosis also. But the major problem with this open is as it is the core size, means while deploying the stent there are higher chances of the forming large size debris. So there are higher chances of getting this distal angulation and CV stroke or the PI. The another minus point is here the support is not that much. So if there is a hard or the stenotic or the fibrotic lesion, the stent expansion won't be that good compared to the closed cell design. Closed cell design gives very good support, and there is a less chances of the getting any necrotic debris for the as the pore size is small, means the amount of the debris size of the debris will be small. But the disadvantage of this closed cell design is it is less flexible. So it won't means there are chances of the dissection also, and there are chances of the stent would not approximate the lumen. Now, the open cell design, and it is examples is the precise stent, then Cordis, Seymour stent, Crook and Birmingham. It is optimal for treating lesion in the tortuous locations. The calcified lesion should be treated with the stent have a high radial force and with the closed cell design, which is the exact stent or abort. The lesion with the greatest risk for distal angulation should be treated with stent that provide greater vessel scaffolding, means closed cell or the. So that is the very small debris set should be small. There is another type of the stent which is the cover stent also, and there is some stent which has a hybrid design, means some part of the stent is a closed cell and some part is the open cell design. So we can choose as per the lesion. Now come to our patient. We have deployed the stent in this internal carotid artery after visualizing the image and deciding the area. Now here we can see it is the self-expanding stent. So we are just withdrawing the catheter and the stent is expanding or taking the place. But here we can see as it is a self-expanding open cell design, at the area of the stenosis stent is not expanded that well. So we have done post dilation, and after post dilation stent has approximated the lumen and it is deployed very well. Now the complication of this procedure, the most common and the most important complication is the stroke. The disease for which we are treating is the most common complication of this procedure. Multiple studies has in the highest patient, they have suggested the incidence of stroke is 2.3 to 6.9, and approx 80% of the stroke is ipsilateral to the sides, and 25 to 30% is classified as a major stroke because the persistence of the neurological deficit beyond the 30 days. Now, after 30 days, the risk of the ipsilateral stroke with carotid stent is extremely low. Mechanism for stroke is the distal angulation, and hemorrhagic stroke account for 15 to 20% of the whole stroke if the in high risk stent restrictions. The second complication is the hemodynamic depression, as we are putting the stent at the area of the carotid body. So while deployment of the stent, there is a high pressure area or generated during the deployment of the stent that leads to the hemodynamic depression or the sudden fall in the blood pressure, sudden fall in the heart rate. This is because of the peripheral vasodilation, bradycardia. This is the mechanism. The third complication is the hyperperfusion syndrome. As we are putting the stent in the carotid artery, that leads to the dysregulation of the cerebral vasopressor response and sudden increase in the blood pressure or sudden increase in the blood flow in the brain. That leads to, clinically it is determined by some kind of the confusion, nausea, vomiting, and no specific motor deficit, but it can present as a specific neurological deficit. This severe kind of the hyperperfusion leads to intracerebral or the subarachnoid hemorrhage, which has a very high mortality rate, 40 to 60%. The risk factor for the cerebral hyperperfusion is pre-existing hypertension, post-procedural hypertension, contralateral carotid occlusion, and critical ipsilateral carotid stenosis. Then incomplete circle of the Willis. This incomplete circle of the Willis, because it is already hyperperfusion syndrome, including GTN means nitroprusside, GTN, calcium antagonist, and the ACE inhibitor. So beta blocker labetalol is the only or the better choice for these patients. Adverse cardiac events during the procedure. The SAPPHIRE trial has shown the compared with.
Now, before you go to see, I was going to ask you.
Yes, sir.
See, when it comes to any vascular disease everywhere. See, this carotid atherosclerosis, at least 25 to 30% will have some amount of coronary disease source.
Yes, sir.
Minimum 25. So if you investigate this patient, they just will.
Actually, sir, I have put that part also. Actually, for the screening purpose, it is not recommended to investigate asymptomatic patient until and unless we are going with bypass surgery. If you are going to do any surgery or intervention for this patient, in this patient also you need to investigate. Otherwise, no need to investigate. And if you are finding in asymptomatic patient, if you are finding less than 60% in stenosis, no need to do anything. Now, will depend whether to do surgical or whether medical management or whether to do endarterectomy or the stenting. There is a multiple trial, SAPPHIRE trial. All these trials suggesting that endarterectomy and carotid stenosis, carotid artery stenting. Here, the 30-day stroke and death is more with carotid endarterectomy in the SAPPHIRE trial. But after that, all the trials have little bit similar values. Long-term stroke rate in the carotid stenting is less in the SAPPHIRE trial, but after that, this is more or less similar values. Either do surgical or the stenting. As stenting is best or first choice for the restenosis of the artery after the surgery, then anatomically high lesion, then the post-radiation stenosis, hostile leg means not favorable anatomy of the leg for the surgery, and the patient unfit for the surgery, extremely high surgical risk. Now the surgery is the best choice is the stenosis with the friable thrombus. If there is a thrombus in the artery, the plaque with ulceration or the instability, and the subocclusive lesions. Come to the carotid screening. Routine carotid screening is not recommended. The for patient with 2 or more vascular risk factors, if the patient has IST with PUD, ongoing vascular disease, for that patient the screening is recommended, but it is to optimize the risk factor control in the medical therapy. It is not for the stenting. We can do screening in the high risk patient, but it is not for stenting. Screening if the patient is undergoing CABG, recommended if there is a recent history of stroke, the screening is recommended. No recent it is class 2B indication. And if you find any disease in the carotid artery, if patient is less than 6 months of the stroke, revascularization should be considered with 50 to 90% stenosis, and first choice in patient with 50 to 90%. Means endarterectomy should be the first choice if patient is undergoing CABG, and it is not recommended in less than 50% stenosis. In neurologically asymptomatic patient scheduled for CABG, prophylactic carotid revascularization is not recommended in 70 to 99%. The carotid revascularization should be considered if the patient with stenosis, carotid stenosis with contralateral occlusion. Means in bilateral carotid stenosis, in that patient we can do.
So that means that if a patient has dense hemiplegia, higher weight, and he happens to get carotid stenosis up to 90%, he is not advised to get it open.
Sir, dense hemiplegia is symptomatic.
1 year back,
1 year back, not advised.
right?
Not advised.
In which NSSI you do carotid stenting?
Sir,
Conscious
yeah.